It's not what it looks like. Welcome back, fellow nerds, to Nerd In. Today, we're diving back into the Friends official cookbook, and we're going to be doing something really evil and messed up. We're going to be serving vegetarian steak. Today, we're doing Phoebe's pregnancy steak. It's got a chimichurri compound butter, but we're going to go through it all. You're going to get to see all of it. And as we are going through it, you will be hearing the lovely words of my wife explaining what the episode's about. So crank that heat on high, and let's burn the sky!
Hi everybody, today we are examining Season 4, Episode 16, the one with the fake party. I personally love this episode, think it's really funny, one of my favorites. And it starts out with Phoebe trying to figure out what she wants to eat. She's currently pregnant with her brother's triplets, which they don't know it's triplets yet, but if you've seen the show, she has her brother's triplets. And everything is making her nauseous, until she gets a whiff of Joey's shower sandwich that has bologna on it, because in true Joey fashion, he eats in the shower. The babies are craving meat, which is a huge problem for Phoebe because she is a vegetarian, so she's worried about that. And while this is happening, Rachel, her storyline this episode is her trying to find the courage to ask out her client Joshua, and she decides to take the easy way out and write him a note, and is having trouble coming up with anything. Ross's storyline during this episode is all about his 2-week fling with his girlfriend Emily, and because she's leaving to go back to London, that's what leads to the party happening in the first place. And as all this is happening, Phoebe tries all of these different ways to try to not eat meat. So she tries to trick the babies with soy burgers, and she ends up getting sick, and Joey's telling her, oh, you look so beautiful when you're pregnant, and all this stuff, and she said, I'm not beautiful, I'm sweaty, and I throw up all the time, so clearly, I'm not. And for someone who has had 3 children, I can commiserate with that. And after Rachel goes back to work, she tries to give Joshua the note by slipping it into the pocket of the coat he was going to purchase, and he lets it slip that he went on a date, and it made him realize that it was too soon after his divorce to date anybody. So Rachel snatches the note out of the pocket and lies to him and says they're having a party so she can see him outside of work. The party ends up being a surprise bon voyage thing for Ross's girlfriend Emily. Of course, obviously no one knows about it except for Rachel. And Rachel during this party is using so many different tactics to get Joshua to notice her, including playing hard to get by tying a cherry stem with her tongue, wearing her lucky dress, putting on her cheerleading outfit from high school since it never missed, and that ultimately leads to her trying to take off her bra underneath her shirt because of Joey's suggestion from the movie Flashdance. But Ross's only concern during all of this is trying to whisk Emily away to enjoy the evening he had planned for her. But she ends up really enjoying herself and sits with Monica to hear stories and look at photo albums, so they end up staying for a while. And during all of this, Joshua has been lurking around and he's just not into it at all. So Rachel goes up to everyone and says, hey, what can I do to get him to notice me? And she says, why don't we play spin the bottle? And she's like, we're not in high school, like that's not something we should be doing. But everyone decides they want to leave at that point, so she's like, no, you have to stay. And they end up actually playing spin the bottle in their late 20s. Rachel spins it first, and it lands on Joshua, but they don't even kiss because the baby kicked in Phoebe's stomach, and everyone freaked out about it. And of course that bummed Rachel out. And after the game's over, they're making sandwiches, and Phoebe takes Chandler's away from him by taking a bite out of his hand. And because of this, she feels a little bit discouraged, so Joey tells her if she wants to do something wrong, she needs to do it right, and pulls out 2 steaks out of the freezer. And after eating them, she feels full but horrible about how many animals had to die so she could eat. And she thought about it throughout her pregnancy, how many animals that were going to have to die for all of this to happen. So Joey says he will take that burden off of her and stop eating meat until the babies come. And he says that'll even out everything meat-wise for her, so she doesn't have to worry about any more animals dying. And then Rachel, being crazy, then comes in her cheerleading outfit to give Emily a big American goodbye cheer that ends up with a busted tooth and lip. And as she takes Joshua to get her coat, like I mentioned earlier, she tries to be super sexy and take off her bra, which is super unsuccessful. It just makes her look even more crazy. And then she finally tells Joshua that she has feelings for him and that she was trying to seduce him. And then he tells her that he feels the same way, but he still thinks it's too early from his divorce to do anything about it. Ross is out in the hallway. He's super upset about not being able to spend time with Emily. So Rachel comes out to talk to him and console him about it and explain to him that this is not a 2-week fling. Everyone knows it because him and Emily, they click, and she's sitting in there with all of his friends to hear stories. And while they're sitting out there, Josh comes back to kiss Rachel, but it's interrupted by pathetic loser Chandler. And even after all the shenanigans, she gets the guy, and they go to the apartment for coffee.
Okay, so you can't have just steak for dinner, as much as there are some people out there that would like that. But to satisfy all of the pregnancy cravings, if you are cooking this for someone that is pregnant, or to satisfy your own personal hunger, we have decided to mix up some sides. So we've got some Yukon Gold boiling right now. We're going to make some mashed potatoes to go alongside it. And we've got some asparagus that we're going to boil, shock them, and then we're going to saute them in the same pan that the steak is going to be cooked on. We're going to cook that dead last and get them nice and hot. So that way we have a very nice complement to go with the meat and everything else. Mushrooms, if you like mushrooms, are a great substitute inside for this as well. You can put some mushrooms on top of it, fry some onions. Basically, when you're done cooking your steak in this or whatever other pan you might be using, it calls for cast iron. This is what I'm going to use tonight. However you cook, whatever pan you cook the steak and the meat in, once you pull it out and pull it off to rest, because if you just cooked in a 500-degree oven, you'd want a minute to relax too. Cook the onions, the peppers, the asparagus, the whatever vegetable you're having with it, and it'll allow that flavor of the meat to coat the vegetables, so it makes it more palatable for the individuals, and it makes it taste a little bit better. The final product. And by that I mean what we need to let rest. So we're gonna go ahead and pull these out. That butter melted over it really, really nicely. Last piece. Right there. Okay. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna reset this on the stove so we can cook the asparagus. And what that needs is we're just gonna turn this up real high. And one of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna actually put some of the chimichurri butter in with the asparagus as it's cooking, and we're gonna season it and everything. We're gonna toss it around with the tongs. So that'll give the steak, the ribeyes, a few minutes to rest. Make sure your vegetables are nice and hot. The mashed potatoes have been finished, thanks to my beautiful wife. And then we're gonna do the tasting and all that fun stuff. And yeah, it's gonna be good stuff. So let's go ahead and dive right in to cooking some asparagus. We're gonna plate it in a minute, and then we're gonna eat and have a nice little taste test. So we'll see you guys in just a minute. All right, so there's two ways to do this. First is you take your beautifully cooked ribeye and you just bring it right over to here, place it with your delicious dinner. Take a small piece of your chimichurri butter and put it right there on the edge so it kind of melts and angles down, so that way it just coats the rest of it once it's finished cooking. The other way is to take it, you want your knife to be ready, and this is a very tender piece of meat right now, so you want to be careful because it is falling apart on the knife as I'm cutting it. This is just basic plating. And you just use the knife to help guide you. And just like this, fan it out a little bit, and boom. It's a beautiful steak. Take your chimichurri, and you put it again right along the top there so it kind of melts and goes down. And then it's time to find out how good this is.
You would think it would be spicy, but it's not. It's really good.
Alright, here goes my bite. The butter is really nice because it like has that tiny bit of kick from the jalapeno, and it tastes really sweet. I don't know, and like the steak is just so like tender and like falls apart. Pretty good.
Let's get critical. It's really good. The jalapeno flattens out, thanks in part, mostly due to the fat of the steak, which is probably why it calls for the ribeye. You can get the hint of the cilantro at the very end, which is really nice. The shallots are just, it's a good compliment to anything. And the garlic is surprisingly mild. Yeah, this is phenomenal. 5 out of 5 would recommend. It's really good. I'm gonna go eat my dinner now. Thank you so much for checking in to Nerd In. And until next time, we're checking out. Have a good day. Lads, here we go. I wasn't ready. You didn't give me anything. You just started counting down. You didn't ask like, hey, you ready? Yeah. No.
Oh, those are gonna look so crazy.